Good afternoon, students. Today we will start with the next session. Topic for today's session is International Pricing Decision. I, Dr. Rohan Prabhakar Devale, welcome you all. Learning objectives for today's sessions. Our first learning objective is review the basic pricing concept that underline the successful international marketing pricing strategy. Then identify different pricing strategies and objectives that influence the decision about pricing products in global markets. Then we'll summarize the various incomes that affects the final price of the product. We'll list some of the environmental influence that impact the prices. Apply the ethnocentric, polycentric, geocentric framework to decision regarding price. We'll explain some of the tactics global companies can use to combat the problem of grey market goods. Then assess the impact of dumping on prices in the global market. Also, we'll compare and contrast different types of price fixing. We'll explain the concept of transfer pricing. We'll define counter trade and explain the various forms it can take. First, we'll start with basic pricing concept. Generally speaking, the international trade results in lower prices of goods. Lower prices, in turn, help keep a country's rate of inflation in check. In a true global market, the law of one price would prevail like this: all customers in the market could get the best product available for the best price. One of the author, Lloyd Bryan, and his collaborative note, the article was Race for the World. A global market exists for certain products such as crude oil, commercial aircrafts, diamonds, and integrated circuits, that is IC. All other things being equal, like a Boeing 787 cost the same worldwide. By contrast, the compact disc or maybe another products like beer, etc., are available around the world, actually being offered in markets that are national rather than global in nature. That is, these are markets where national competition reflects differences in factors such as cost, regulation, and intensity of rivalry among the various industry members. Like we can take example of beer market is extremely fragmented. Even though Budweiser is the leading global brand, it commands less than 4% of the total market. The nature of beer market explains why, for example, a six pack of Henkin varies in price as much as 50%. If we adjusted the purchasing power parity, then transportation and other transportation cost also, then depending on where it's sold. In Japan, for example, the price of a function of a competition between the Henken and other imports and the five national producers like Kirin and Asahi, maybe Orion, etc., are collectively command 60% of the total market. Because of these differences in the national markets, the global market must develop a pricing system and pricing policies that take into account the price floors, then price ceiling and optimum prices also. A firm's pricing system that and policies must be consistent with other uniquely global opportunities and constraints. For example, many companies that are active in the 15 nations of Eurozone are adjusting to new cross-border transparencies in prices. Similarly, the internet has made the price information for many markets or many products available across the globe. We can easily check on internet the prices of garments, the prices of toothpaste, the prices of soaps, maybe prices of oil, etc., very easily for each and every country. Companies must carefully consider how customers in one country or region will react if they discover that they are paying significantly higher prices for the same product as customers in the other part of the world. There is another important internal organization consideration besides the cost. Within the typical corporation, there are many interest groups and frequently conflicting price objectives, like divisional price president, then regional executives and country managers, etc., are each concerned about the profitability at their respective organizational levels. Similarly, the director of global market seeks the competitive prices in the world market. The controller and financial vice president are concerned about profits. The manufacturing vice president seek long production runs with maximum manufacturing efficiency. The tax manager in the organization is concerned about the compliances with government transfer pricing legislation. Finally, the company counsel is concerned about the antitrust implications of global pricing practices. Ultimately, price generally reflects the goals set by members or sales staff or product managers or corporate division chiefs, etc. We'll talk about global pricing objectives and strategies. So there are many like market scheming, etc. strategy. First, we'll talk about the basic concept. Whether dealing with the single home country market or multiple country market, marketing managers must develop pricing strategies and pricing objectives as well as various strategies for achieving those objectives. First, you have to set the objectives, then accordingly how you are going to tackle with those objectives, you have to make strategies. However, a number of pricing issues are unique to the global marketing. The pricing strategy for a particular product may vary from country to country. A product may be positioned at a low priced mass market product in some countries and premium priced and niche product in other countries. Pricing objectives may also vary depending on a product's life cycle stage. As we have seen in previous chapter, at each and every stage of product life cycle like introduction, growth, maturity and decline, different pricing strategies, different promotional strategies, etc. need to be adopted by the organization. So it depends on product life cycles stage. The particular product is at which stage of the product life cycle and country's specific competitive situation. In marketing, global pricing decision, it is also necessary factor in external considerations such as added cost associated with shipping goods, then long distance across the national boundaries. The issue of global pricing can also be fully integrated in the product design process, an approach widely used by Japanese companies. Now there are three strategies: market scheming and financial objectives, then penetration pricing and non-financial objectives, and companion products. So we'll see one by one. First, we'll start with market scheming and financial objectives. Price can be used as a strategic variable to achieve specific financial goals, including ROI, that is return on investment, profit, and rapid recovery of product development cost. When financial criteria such as profit and maintenance of margins are the objectives, then the product must be a part of a superior value proposition for buyers. Price is integral to the total positioning strategy. The market scheming pricing strategy is often part of a deliberate attempt to reach a market segment that is willing to pay a premium price for a particular brand or for a specialized or unique product. Companies that seek a competitive advantage by pursuing differentiation strategies or positioning their products in the premium segment frequently are market scheming. Now, various luxury goods marketers that target their global market or target the global elite market segment use the skimming strategies. For years, Mercedes-Benz utilized a skimming strategy. However, this created an opportunity for Toyota to introduce its luxury Lexus line and undercut the Mercedes. So, the skimming pricing strategy is also appropriate in the introductory phase of product life cycle when both product production capacity and competitions both are limited. By seeing a deliberately high price, demand is limited to the innovators and early adopters who are willing and able to pay the prices. When the product enters the growth stage, from introduction stage when enters to the growth stage of the life cycle and competitive competition increases, then manufacturers start to cut the prices. So first they are using the skimming price and then they are using the price cut formula or strategy. This strategy has been used consistently in the consumer electronic industry. For example, when Sony introduced the first consumer VCR in the 1970, the retail price exceeds $1,000. The same was true when compact disc players, the CD player, were launched in early 1980s. Within a few years, prices of these products dropped well below 50% of the introduced value, that is, from 1000 it dropped to $500. Today, the VCR is virtually absolute, while the compact disc players are considered commodities. A similar pattern is evident with HD TVs. In the fall of 1998, HD TVs went on the sale of United States with the pricing starting about $7,000. The price maximized revenue on the limited volume and matched the demand to available supply. Now the prices of HD TVs are dropping significantly as the consumers become more familiar with the HD TVs and its advantages. And the next gen factories in Asia bringing the lower cost and increased production capacity. In the year 2005, Sony surprised the industry by launching 40-inch HD TV for $3,500, and by the end of the year 2006, comparable HD TV were selling for just rupees $2,000. So they have launched with $7,000 and then the price dropped drastically to $2,000. Today, equivalent set cost less than $1,000 in US. The challenge facing the manufacturer is to hold the line of the prices if they do not succeed in the market. Though HGTV may also become commercialized and commoditized. Next strategy is market penetration strategy. So penetration pricing and non-financial objectives. So some companies are pursuing the non-financial objectives with their pricing strategy. Price can be used as a competitive weapon or to gain or maintain the market position. Market share or other sales objectives, these are frequently set by the companies that enjoy the cost leadership position in their industry. A market penetration pricing strategy calls for setting price levels that are low enough to quickly build the market share. Historically, many companies that use this type of pricing were located in the Pacific Rim. The scale-efficient plants and low-cost labor allowed these companies to blitz the market. It should be noted that the first-time exporter is unlikely to use the penetration pricing. The reason is simple. Penetration pricing often means that the product may be sold at a loss for a certain length of time. Unlike Sony and many other companies that are new to exporting cannot absorb these such losses. nor they are likely to have the marketing system in the place, including transportation, distribution, and sales organization, that allows the global companies like Sony to make effective use of penetration strategy. Many companies, especially those in the food industry, launch new products that are not innovative enough to qualify the patent protection. When this occurs, penetration pricing is recommended as a means of achieving the market saturation before competitors copy the product. Companion products, captive pricing, aka razors and blade pricing. So, one crucial element is missing from the discussion of a video game console pricing in the strategic decision making in the global marketing feature. uh, the video games themselves. So, the biggest profit in the video industry or video gaming industry comes from the sales of the game software. Even though Sony Microsoft may actually lose money on each console, sales of hit video titles generate the substantial revenues and profits. Sony, Microsoft, and Nintendo receive the licensing fees from the companies that create the game. Moreover, typical households own one or two consoles but dozen of games. So one quote by the Howard Stringer, CEO of Sony Corporation is, nobody buys a piece of hardware because they like a hardware. They buy it to play the movies or music content. So this illustrates the concept of companion products. A video game console has no value without software, and DVD players has no value without movies. Additional examples abound. A razor handle has no value without the blades, and Gillette can sell a single match-three razor for less than $5, or even give the razor away for free. Over a period of years, the company will make the significant profits from selling the package of replacement blades. As the saying goes, if you make money on your blade, you can give away the razors. So that means if your blades are selling, then you can give the free razors to the customers. That is just one example. So companion products pricing has long been a preferred strategy of Vodafone, AT&T, and T, and other cellular service providers. They buy handset at prices set by the Motorola, Nokia, and other manufacturers, and they subsidize the cost of offering the significant discounts or maybe free of cost handset to the subscribers who sign the long-term contracts. We can take a similar example of water purifier. Suppose the water purifier costing is 8,000, then every year you have to change the inside things, so that cost rupees maybe 5,000 per year. So cost of those replacement of the inner things of inner filters is more, and each and every year the customer has to change the inner filter, so it is continual process. So whatever the profit they are gaining from the selling of single first aquaguard, so they are getting more profit by selling the inner filters every year. The carriers make up the price difference by charging additional fees for extras such as roaming, text messaging, and so on. However, this approach does not always work globally. For example, in most of the Apple's iPhone is priced at the equivalent of $199. In India, however, consumers does not like to be locked up into the long-term contracts, and iPhone sell for the equivalent of rupees 600. Moreover, the Apple distributes the iPhone in India exclusively through the stores operated by Airtel, an Indian carrier, and Vodafone, etc. So Indian cell phones iPhone has have been slow because the consumer choose the lower priced models from Nokia, Samsung, then Redmi, and Oppo, so on. Those are distributed through more retailers. Also, a significant number of $199 iPhones are making a trip from the United States to India in tourist luggage. So, what is target costing? So, Japanese companies have traditionally approached the cost issues in such a way that results in substantial production saving and the products that are competitively priced in the global marketplace. Toyota, Sony, Olympus are some of the well-known Japanese companies that use the target costing. The process, sometimes known as design to cost, can be described like the target consumers or the target costing ensures that the development team will bring profitable products to market not only with the right level of quality and functionality, but also with appropriate prices for the target customer segment. It is a discipline that harmonizes the labor of uh, the separate participants in the development of efforts from designers and manufacturing engineers to market researchers and suppliers. In fact, the company reasons backward from the customer's needs and willingness to pay instead of following the flawed but the common practices of cost plus pricing. So, Western companies are beginning to adopt some of these money saving ideas. For example, target costing was used in the development of Renault's Logan, a car that retails less than $10,000 in Europe. According to the Alexander Menzold, who was the chief of Renault's Dacia unit, the design approach prevented the technical personnel from adding features that customers did not consider absolutely necessary. For example, the Logan's side windows have relatively flat glass; curved glass is more attractive, but it adds the cost. The Logan was originally targeted at customers in Eastern Europe. To the company surprise, it also proven to be popular in France as well as in Germany. So we can say that the target costing process begins with the market mapping and product definition and positioning that requires using the concept and techniques. The marketing team must do the following things like determine the segment or segments to be targeted, as well as prices that customers in the segment will be willing to pay. Using the market research techniques such as conjoint analysis and team seeks to better understand how the customers will perceive the product features and functionalities. Compute overall target cost with the aim of ensuring the company's future profitability. Then allocate the target cost to the product's various functions. Calculate the gap between the target cost and estimated actual production cost. Think of debits and credits in accounting. Because of target cost is fixed, additional funds allocated to the sub-assemblies team for improving a product function must come from another sub-assembly team. Obey the cardinal rule, that is, if the design team cannot meet the targets, then the product should not be launched. Only at this point are designing, engineering, and supply pricing prices issues dealt with. The extensive consultation between all value chain members is used to meet the targets. Once the necessary negotiations and trade-off have been settled, manufacturing begins, followed by continuous cost reduction. In the United States, cost is typically determined after designing, engineering, and marketing decisions have been made in sequential fashion. If the cost is too high, the process cycle back to square on the like this design stage. Now you are going to calculate the pricing. So calculating pricing, cost plus pricing, and export price escalations. The laptop computers, for example, many characteristics of today's global marketplace, no matter what is the brand, like Acer, Apple, then Dell or HP, for example, components are typically sourced in several different countries, and the computers themselves are assembled in China, Taiwan, or maybe Japan. Within 2 days, the customers are sent via the air freight to the countries where they will be sold. As anyone has studied the managerial accounts knows that finished goods have a cost associated with its actual production. In global marketing, however, the total cost will depend on the ultimate market destination, plus the mode of transport, tariffs, various fees, also handling charges and documentation cost, etc. So expert price escalations is the increase in the final selling of the price of goods traced across the borders and reflects these factors. Now I will just show you the list of total 8 basic considerations for those whose responsibility includes setting prices on goods that across the borders. So you should ask questions like, does the price reflect the product's quality? Then is the price competitive given local market conditions? Then should the firm pursue the market penetration or market scheming or some other pricing objectives? What are the what type of discount and allowances should be should be the firm offer to the international consumers? Should prices differ with the market segments? Then what pricing options are available if the firm's cost increase or decrease? If a demand in the international market elastic or inelastic? Then are the firm's prices likely to be viewed by the host country government as reasonable or exploitative? Do the foreign countries' dumping laws pose a problem? So the companies frequently use a method known as cost plus or cost-based pricing when selling goods outside their home country markets. So what is this cost-based pricing? So cost-based pricing is based on an analysis of internal and external costs. So internal cost includes the cost for material, labor, and testing, etc. At a starting point, the firms that comply with the Western cost accounting principles typically use the full absorption cost method. This defines the per unit product cost as a sum of the past or current direct or indirect manufacturing and overhead cost. However, when goods across the national borders, additional costs and expenses such as transportation, duties, and insurance are incurred. If the manufacturer is responsible for them, they too must be included. By adding the desired profit margin to the cost plus figure, managers can arrive at a final selling price. It is important to note that in China, some of the other developing countries, many manufacturing enterprises are state-run and state subsidized. This makes it difficult to calculate the accurate cost figures and opens countries' exporters to charge that they are selling products for less than the true cost of the producing them. Companies using the right cost plus pricing set prices without regard to the 8 consideration listed previously. They make no adjustments to reflect the market conditions outside the home country. The obvious advantage of rigid cost-based pricing is its simplicity. Assuming that both internal and external cost figures are readily available, it is relatively easy to arrive at a quote. The disadvantage is that this approach ignores the demand and competitive conditions in the target markets. The risk is that the prices will either to be too high or too short. If the rigid cost-based approach results in the marketplaces, it is only by chance. Rigid cost plus pricing is attractive to inexperienced exporters who are frequently less concerned with the financial goals than with reassembling the market potential. Such exporters are typically responding to the global market opportunities in a reactive manner, not proactively seeking them. An alternate method, that is flexible cost plus pricing. So it is used to ensure that the prices in the competitive in the context of the particular market environment. So this approach is frequently used by the experienced exporters and global marketers. They realize that the rigid cost plus approach can result in severe price escalations, with the uh, unintended result and exports are priced at levels above what customers can pay. Managers who utilize the flexible cost plus pricing are acknowledge the importance of the 8 criteria that we have just listed, like that is there on the screen. So flexible cost plus uh, pricing sometimes incorporate the estimated future cost method to establish the future cost and all other components. For example, the automobile industry uses palladium in the catalyst converters. Because the market price of heavy metals is volatile in nature and varies with the supply and demand, component manufacturers might use the estimated future cost methods to ensure that the selling price that set enables them to cover their costs. Every commercial transaction is based on a contract of sale, and the trade terms in the contract specify the exact point at which the ownership of merchandise is transferred from the seller to the buyer and which party in the transaction pays which costs. Now, here are some listed activities. So, these activities, 9 activities, must be performed when the goods cross the international boundaries. So the following are the activities must be performed when goods cross the international boundaries. So obtaining an export license is required, and obtaining a currency permit that is required if required. Then packing the goods for export, then transporting the goods to the place of departure, then preparing a land bill for landing, then completing necessary customer export papers, then preparing customs or consular invoices as required by the country of destination, arranging for ocean freight and preparation, obtaining marine insurance and certificate of the policy. So, who is responsible for performing these tasks? It depends on the terms of the sale. The internationally accepted terms and trades are known as international commercial terms, that is in Incoterms. So, so these Incoterms are classified into 4 categories. That is X works, that is EXW. Then free carrier, that is F terms, that is FCA. Also, free alongside ship, that is FAS name port, or free on board FOB name term. There is also one in Incoterms. Several Incoterms are known as C terms or main carriage terms when the goods are ship cost, insurance and freight. That is CIF name terms. So I will talk about some environmental influences on some pricing decisions. So there can be currency fluctuations, then inflation environment, government control, subsidiaries and regulations. So we'll see one by one. First, start with environmental influences on the pricing decisions. So global marketers must deal with a number of environmental considerations when marketing pricing decisions. Along them are the currency fluctuations, then inflation, government control and subsidiaries, and competitive behavior also. Some of these factors work in conjunction with the others. For example, inflation may be accompanied by the government controls. So now one by one we'll discuss each and every term. Start with currency fluctuations. So in global marketing, fluctuating exchange rate complicate the task of setting price. We have seen in chapter 2 that currency fluctuations can create significant challenges and opportunities for any companies that exports. So management faces different decision situations depending on whether currencies in the key market have strengthened or weakened relative to the home country currency. A weakening of the home country currency swing exchange rates in the favorable direction. A, a producer in a weak currency country can choose to cut the export prices to increase the market share or maintain its prices and reap the healthier profit margins. Overseas sales can result in windfall revenues when translated into the home country currency. If it is a different situation when a company's home currency strengthens, this is unfavorable terms of the event for the typical exporter because of the overseas revenues are reduced when translated into the home currency or home country currency. Now, the degree of exposure varies among the companies. So for example, Harley Davidson exports all its motorcycles from the United States. So in every export market, the company's pricing decision must take the currency fluctuation into account. Similarly, 100% of the German automaker Porsche production takes place at home. So Germany serves as its export base. However, the exports within the Eurozone Porsche is insulted from the currency fluctuations. In responding to the currency fluctuations, global marketers can utilize other elements of the marketing mix besides the price. For in some instances, slight upward price adjustment due to the strengthening of the country's currency have a little effect on the export performances, especially if the demand is relatively inelastic. Companies in the strong currency country can also choose the absorb the cost of maintaining international market prices in the previous level, at least for a while. So other options include offering improved quality or after-sale services, improving productivity and cutting costs, and sourcing outside the home country. So the companies using the rigid cost plus pricing method described here earlier may be forced to change to a more flexible approach. Use of this flexible cost plus method to reduce the prices in the response of unfavorable currency swing is an example of market holding strategy and is adopted by companies that do not want to lose the market share. If by contrast, large prices increases are deemed unavoidable, then managers may find their products can no longer compete. We'll talk about some inflationary environment. So, inflation or a persistent upward change in the price level is a problem in many countries or many country markets, as increase in money increase in money supply can cause the inflation. As noted in the previous section, the inflation often reflected in the prices of imported goods for a for a country whose currency has been devalued. Uh, Spiraling commodities and raw materials costs have have been putting upward pressures on the prices for the variety of goods. You can take example of higher prices of corn and wheat force the companies such as Kraft Food to raise the prices. Similarly, prices for copper, then oil and other commodities means that the managers at United Kingdom, United Technologies must review the pricing for the helicopters, then jet engines and air conditioning systems the company makes. And as anyone who has shopped for clothes lately can attest, the sweaters, jeans, and t-shirts have been going up. What is the reason? The cotton inventories are low worldwide, and the prices are almost doubled. So, as essential requirements for pricing in an inflationary environment is the maintenance of the operating profit margins. When present, inflation requires the price adjustments for a simple reason, that is, selling prices must cover the rising cost. Regardless of the cost accounting practices, if the company maintains its margin, it has effectively protected itself from the effect of inflation. This in turn requires manufacturing and retailers of all the types to become more technologically adapt. In Brazil, we can take example like where the inflation rate was high in 2000% during the late 1980s. Retailers sometimes change the prices several times each day. Shelf pricing rather than the individual unit pricing become the norms throughout the retailing sector nearly 15 years before the Walmart arrived in the region. Because their warehouse contained the goods and have been brought at different prices, local retailers are forced to invest in sophisticated computer and commercial communication system to help to keep the pace or speed with the volatile financial environment. They utilize the sophisticated inventory management softwares to help them maintain the financial control. When Walmart came to Brazil in the mid-1990s, it discovered the local competition had the technological infrastructure that allowed them to match its aggressive pricing policies. Government controls subsidiaries and regulations. Government policies and regulations that affect the pricing decisions include dumping legislation, then resale price maintenance legislation, price ceiling, and general reviews of the price levels. Government actions that limits the government's ability to adjust prices can put pressure on the margins. Under certain conditions, government action pose a threat to the profitability of a subsidiary operation. In a country that is undergoing severe financial difficulties and is one of the um, midst of the financial crisis, then the government officials are under pressure to take some type of action. This was true in Brazil for many years. In some cases, government take expanded steps such as selective or broad price control. When selective control are imposed, foreign companies are more vulnerable to the control than the local ones, particularly if the outsiders lack the political influence over the government decisions and local managers have. Again, we can take example of PNG, that is Procter and Gamble, encounter the strict price controls in Venezuela in the late 1980s. Despite increases in the cost of raw materials, Procter and Gamble (P&G) was granted about 50% of the price increases it requested. Even then, months passed before the permission to raise the prices was forthcoming. As a result, by 1988, detergent prices in Venezuela were less than that of the prices in United States. Thus, the government control can also take other forms. And for example, we can take Syntec International, an engineering firm that specializes in restoring the historic structure, spent 8 years seeking the necessary approval from the Egyptian authorities in import special tools to repair the mosque. In addition, the country's port authorities required a deposit of rupees $25,000 before allowing the Syntec to import the diamond tip drills and other specific tools. So we can say that cash deposits requirements such as the one just described clearly creates an incentive for a company to minimize the stated value of the imported goods. Lower prices means the smaller deposits. Other government requirements that affect the pricing decisions are profit transfer rules that restrict the conditions under which the profit can be transferred from a country. Under such rules, a high transfer price paid for imported goods by an affiliating company can be interpreted as a device for transferring profits out of a country. Competitive behavior. Pricing decisions are bounded not only by cost and the nature of demand, but also by the competitive actions. If competitors do not adjust their prices in response to the rising cost, management, even if actually aware of the effect of rising cost on operating margins, will be severely constrained in its ability to adjust the prices accordingly. Conversely, if the competitors are manufacturing or sourcing in a lower-cost country, it may be necessary to cut the prices to stay competitive. We'll take example. In United States, the levy status and company is under price pressure from the several directions. First, that levy faces the stiff competition from the Wagner and Lee brands, marketed by VF Corporation. A pair of Wrangler jeans retailed about $20 at JCPenney and other department stores, compared with the $30 for a pair of Levi 501s. Second, Levi's two primary retail customers like JCPenney and Sears are aggressively marketing their own private label brands. Finally, designer jeans from Calvin Klein, Polo and Diesel are enjoying uh, renewed popularity. So, exclusive fashion brands such as Steven and Lucky retail for more than $100 per pair. Outside the United States, thanks to the heritage of the Levi's brand and its mass consumption, Levi jeans command premium prices of $80 or more than one pair for 501 rupees. To support the prestige image, Levi's are sold in boutiques. So levies non-US sales represents about one third of the revenues, but more than 50% of the profit. Uh, in an attempt to apply its global experience and enhance the brand in the United States, Levy has opened a number of original Levi's stores in selected American cities. Despite such efforts, Levi's rang up only $4.4 billion sales in 2010 compared to $7.1 billion in 1996. So a decade ago, the official closed the six plants and moved most of the companies to North American production offshore in an effort to cut the cost. Next is using a strategy, sorry, using sourcing as a strategic pricing tool. We'll just take as 1 hour is there, so we'll just take break of only 1 minute and I will come back. Just be there. Okay, so next part is using sourcing as a strategic pricing tool. Okay. The global marketers have several options for addressing the problem of price escalation or the environmental factors we have just discussed in the last section. Product and market competition in part dictate the marketers' choices. So, marketers of domestically manufactured finished products may be forced to switch to offshore sourcing of certain components to keep the cost and prices competitive in nature. In particular, China is quickly gaining the reputation of the world's workshop. So, US bicycle companies such as Huffy are relying more heavily on the production sources in China and Taiwan. Another option is a throughout audit and distribution structure in the target markets. Rationalization of the distribution structure can substantially reduce the total markups required to achieve the distribution in international markets. Rationalization may include selecting new intermediaries, assigning new responsibilities to odd intermediaries, or establishing direct marketing operations. Next is three policy alternatives for global pricing. So, what pricing policy should a global company pursue? So remember that price is a strategic variable, and pricing strategy can develop using rational analytical approach or an intuitive one. So for example, when Sidney Frank created Grey Goose vodka uh, at a set of the per bottle price to $10. I'm sorry for these examples, but in a particular book that was referred by the uh, your syllabus, the Pearson publication book of Global Marketing 7th edition. These examples only of vodka and beer, such type of examples are there. So I don't have any option, but I have to explain those. So why? Because he could that Frank did not conduct any form of the market analysis. Instead, he relied on some instinct and insights gained during a long career in the liquor business. Similar examples of simple decisions rules used in price include various things. So, viewed broadly, a company has three positions it can take for worldwide pricing. So, these three positions can be extension or ethnocentric pricing, or adaptation or polycentric pricing, or geocentric pricing. So, first we'll talk about the extension or ethnocentric pricing. So, the first position can be called as extension or ethnocentric pricing. That extension of ethnocentric pricing call for per unit price of an item to be the same no matter where in the world the buyer is located. In such instances, the importer must absorb the freight and import duties. The extension approach has the advantage of extreme simplicity because it does not require the information on competitive or the market condition for implementation. The disadvantage of the ethnocentric approach is that it does not respond to the competitive and market conditions of each market or each national market, and therefore does not maximize the company's profit in each national market or globally. When a toy maker uh, in the US, his name was Mattel, he adopted US products for overseas markets. For example, little consideration was given to the price levels that resulted from US prices were converted to the local currency prices. As a result, Holiday Barbie and some of the other toys were overpriced in the global markets. Now, as I'm taking the example of the toys, I just like to say that the toys market, like plastic toys and this electronic price market in worldwide, is having a huge base of customers. So it is very much popular worldwide. So if anyone is having some interest in having the figures, they can Google it and they can search that what uh, large toys market is there worldwide. And mostly the all markets, they are imported uh, from China. Similarly, Mercedes executives recently moved beyond an ethnocentric approach to pricing. So, one quote again, that in the past, Mercedes vehicles would be priced for the European market, and that price was translated into US dollar. Surprise that you are 20% more expensive than the Lexus 400, and you don't sell too many cars. So that was the quote by Joey, who was the executive vice president for global sales, marketing, and services. So this was extension or ethnocentric pricing. Next is adaptation or polycentric pricing. So this is the second policy. So adoption and or polycentric pricing that permits subsidiaries or affiliate managers or independent distributors to establish whatever price they feel is most appropriate in their market environment. There is no requirement that prices to be coordinated from one country to the next. So ICA takes the polycentric approach of pricing. So while it is the company policy to have the lowest prices on the comparable products in every market, managers in each country set their own prices. These depend in the part of the local factors such as competition, then wages, taxes, and advertising rates and all. So overall, ICA's prices are the lowest in the United States, where the company competes with the large retailers. Prices are higher in Italy, where the local competitors tend to be smaller, more upscale furniture stores than those in US market. We have taken the case study of ICA, if you remember, in the previous chapters. So generally, prices are higher in the country where the ICA brand is strongest. When ICA opened its first store in mainland China, the young professional couples who are the company's primary target segment consider the prices to be too high. So the Englishman Ian Duffy, in charge of the store, quickly increased the amount of the Chinese-made furniture in the stores so that he could lower the prices. So today, the average Chinese customer spend 300 yen, about 36 per visit. One of the recent study of European industrial exporters found that companies utilizing the independent distributors were most likely to utilize the polycentric pricing. Such an approach is sensitive to the local market conditions. However, valuable knowledge and experience within the corporate system concentrating effective pricing strategy are not brought to bear the each local pricing decisions. Because the distributors or local managers are free to set the prices as they see fit, they may ignore the opportunity to draw upon the company's experience. Arbitrage is also the potential problem with the polycentric approach. When disparities in the prices between the different country marketers exceed the transportation and the cost of separating the markets, enterprising individuals can purchase goods in the lower price country market and then transport them for a sell in markets where the higher price prevail. Third approach is geocentric pricing. The third approach, that is geocentric pricing, is more dynamic and proactive than the other two. The company using geocentric pricing neither fixes a single price worldwide nor allows subsidiaries or local distributors to make independent pricing decisions. So instead the geocentric approach represents an intermediate course of action. Geocentric pricing is based on the realization that unique local prices or unique local market factors should be recognized in arriving at the pricing decisions. These factors include local cost, then income levels, competition, and the local marketing strategy. Price must be integrated with other elements of the marketing program. The geocentric approach recognizes the price coordination from the headquarters is necessary in dealing with the international accounts and the product arbitrage. The geocentric approach also consciously and systematically seek to ensure that accumulated national pricing experience is leveraged and applied whenever it is relevant. So the local cost plus return on investment capital and personal fix the price floor for the long term. In the short term, however, the headquarters might decide to set a market penetration objectives and price at less than cost plus return figures by using export sourcing to establish a particular market. This is the case described earlier with the Sony Walkman launch. After the short-term objective might to be arrive at an estimate of the market potential at a price that would be profitable given local sourcing and a certain volume of production. Instead immediately investing in a local manufacturer, a decision might be made to supply the target market initially from the existing higher cost external supply sources. If the market accepts the price and product, the companies can then build a local manufacturing facility to further develop the identified market opportunities in a profitable way. If the market opportunity does not materialize, the company can experiment with the product at other prices because it is not committed to a fixed sales volume by existing local manufacturing facilities. Now we'll talk about gray market goods. Gray market goods are trademarked products that are exported from one country to another country where they are sold by unauthorized persons or unauthorized organizations. This is called as gray market. Now we'll just take one example that suppose that a golf equipment manufacturing sells a golf club to its domestic distributors for $200. It sells the same club to its Thailand distributor for $100. The lower price may be due to differences to overseas demand or maybe ability to pay, or the price difference may reflect the need of compensate the foreign distributors for advertising and marketing the club. The Golf Club, however, never makes it through Thailand. Instead, the Thailand distributor resells the club to a grey marketer in the United States for rupees $150. So the grey marketer can then undercut the prices charged by the domestic distributors who paid to $200 for the club. The manufacturer is now forced to lower the domestic prices or risk losing the sales to the grey market, driving down the manufacturer's profit margins. So additionally, the grey marketers make liberal use of manufacturers' trademarks and often fail to provide the warranties and other services that customer expects from the manufacturers and its authorized distributors. So this practice is also known as parallel importing. Uh, One example I can take here in 1997. I have heard one of my friend has brought Nokia handset from foreign country. So it was said to be purchased from gray market. So as it was not having the warranty in India when it was a brand new set, and after 2 3 months it was got uh, some problems regarding network, etc. But it was not getting repaired in India in free of cost because it was having purchased from US, and the IMEI number that was very much popular or that is still there in your handsets. So unique identity number for handsets. So if that was stressed by the customer, then it was not showing that purchasing from India and it was not having any warranty in India. This is about gray market. So this practice is also known as parallel importing. So occurs when the companies employ a polycentric or multinational pricing policy that calls for the setting prices or setting different prices in different countries' markets. So gray markets can flourish when a product is in short supply, when producers employ scheming strategies in certain markets, or when the goods are subject to substantial markups. For example, in the European pharmaceutical markets, prices vary widely. So in UK, for example, in UK and Netherlands, for example, parallel import accounts for as much as 10% of the sales of the some pharmaceutical brands. So the internet is emerging as a power new tool and allows would-be grey marketers to access the pricing information and reach to the ultimate customers. So gray markets impose the several costs and consequences on the global markets. So this includes following things like you can see on the screen. First is dilution of exclusivity. So authorized dealers are no longer the sole distributors. The product is often available from multiple sources and margins are threatened. So this is about a dilution of exclusivity. Then next is free riding. So if a manufacturer ignores the complaints from authorized channel members, those members may engage in free riding. That is, they may opt to take various actions to offset the downward uh, pressure on margins. These options include cutting back on pre-sale service or customer education or salesperson training. Next is damage to channel relationship. So competitors from grey market products can lead to channel conflicts as authorized distributors attempt to cut cost, complain to manufacturers, or file lawsuits against the grey marketers. Next is undermining segmentation pricing schemes. So as noted earlier, the grey markets can emerge because of the price differentials that results from multinational pricing policies. However, a variety of forces, including the felling trade barriers, the information explosion on the internet, and the modern distribution capabilities, hamper companies' ability to pursue local pricing strategies. Last is reputation and legal liability. So, even though grey market goods carry the same trademark, as goods sold through the authorized channels. They may differ in quality, ingredients, or some other way. Grey market products can compromise manufacturers' reputation and dilute brand equity. As when prescription drugs are sold past their expiration date, or electronics equipment are sold in the markets where they are not approved for use, or where the manufacturers do not honor the warranties. Just I have taken the example of Nokia in the same way. So, according to the Pankaj Mohindro, who was the president of Indian Cellular Association, the grey market is the biggest threat we have today, he said. So you cannot develop this market properly and make the investment in retailing, merchandising, and after-sale services and distribution without a legal market. Now, last part in the gray market, sometimes the gray markets bring a product produced in a single country, like French champagne, for example, again the same example, into the export markets in the competition and with authorized importers. The gray marketers sell at prices that undercuts those set by the legislation importers. So we are moving towards the last part, few last part, that is, first we'll talk about dumping. So what is dumping? Dumping is an important global pricing strategy. So we have seen GATT. So GATT in 1979, anti-dumping code defined dumping as the sale as the sale of an important product at a price lower than that normally charged in a domestic market or country or of origin. In addition, many countries have their own policies and procedures for protecting national companies from dumping. Uh, for example, China has retailed against the years for Western anti-dumping rules by introducing some rules of their own. So China's State Council passed anti-dumping and anti-subsidiary regulations in March 1997. The Ministry of Foreign Trade and Economic Cooperation and the State Economic Trade and Commission have responsibility for anti-dumping matters. So next is about we'll talk about price fixing. So in most instances, it is illegal for representative of two or more companies to secretly set similar prices for their products. This practice known as price fixing. So price fixing is generally held to be uh, anti-competitive act. So companies that collide in this manner are generally trying to ensure higher prices for their products and would generally be available if markets were functionally freely. In horizontal price fixing, the competitors within the industry that make and market the same product conspire to keep the higher prices. For example, in 2011, the European Commission determined that the Procter and Gamble, Unilever, and Henkel had a concept to set their prices for laundry detergent. The term horizontal applies in this instant because Procter and Gamble and its conspiracies are all have the same supply chain level. That is, they are all manufacturers. Vertical price fixing occurs when the manufacturer conspires their wholesalers and retailers, that is channel members at different levels of the manufacturers, to ensure certain retail prices are to be maintained. We can take example, European Commission fined uh, Nintendo nearly $150 million after it was determined that video game company had collude with the European distributors to fix the prices. So during the 1990s, prices of Nintendo video games consoles varied widely across the Europe. They were much more expensive in Spain and Britain and the other countries. However, distributors in the countries with lower retail prices agreed not to sell the retailers in the countries with the higher prices. Now, important concept of transfer pricing. You must have studied transfer pricing in enterprise performance management. So, transfer pricing refers to the pricing of goods and services, also intangible property, bought and sold by operating units or divisions of the same company. In other words, the transfer pricing concern intra-corporate exchanges, which are transactions between the buyers and sellers that have the same corporate parent. For example, Toyota subsidiaries both sell to and buy from each other. So, transfer pricing is an important topic in the global marketing because goods crossing the national borders represent a sale. Therefore, their pricing is a matter of interest both to the tax authorities who want to collect a fair share of the income taxes and to the custom services which wants to collect an appropriate duty on the goods. Now, in determination of the transfer prices to subsidiaries, global companies must address a number of issues, including taxes, duties, and tariffs, country profits transfer rules, and conflicting the objectives of joint venture partners and government regulations. Tax authorities such as Internal Revenue Services (IRS) in United States, then Inland Revenue in the United Kingdom (UK), and Japan's National Tax Administration Agency take a keen interest in the transfer pricing policies or setting transfer pricing policies. Transfer pricing is proving to be a corporate key issue in Europe as the euro makes it easier for tax authorities to audit the transfer pricing policies. Three major alternative approaches can be applied to transfer pricing decisions. The approach used will vary with the nature of the firm, products, markets, and historical circumstances of each case. A market-based transfer pricing is derived from the price required to be competitive in the global marketplace. In other words, it represents an approximation of an arm's length transaction or cost-based transfer pricing. Cost-based, I'll just show you the table. Yes. So first was a market. I'll repeat again. A market-based transfer pricing is derived from the price required to be competitive in the global marketplace. And we can say in another word that it represents the approximation of the arm's length transaction. The next is cost-based. That is cost-based transfer pricing uses an internal cost as the starting point in determining the prices. So cost-based transfer pricing can take the same form as the cost-based pricing methods discussed earlier. The way costs are defined may have an impact on traffics and duties of sales to affiliate and subsidiaries. The third alternative here is to allow the organization's affiliation to determine negotiated transfer pricing among themselves. This method may be employed when the market conditions are subject to frequent changes. So this particular table summarizes the way that different methods satisfy multiple managerial criteria. So what is sales of tangible and intangible property? So each country has its own set of laws and regulations for dealing with the control intra-company transfers. So whatever the pricing rationale, the executives and managers involved in the global pricing policy decisions must familiarize themselves with the laws and regulations in the applicable countries. The pricing rationale must conform with the intentions of these laws and regulations. Although the applicable laws and regulations often seem uh, uh, perplexing and ample evidences exist that most governments simply seek to prevent the tax avoidance and ensure the fair distribution of income from the operations of companies doing the business internationally. Now we'll talk about counter trade, and in counter trade there are three parts. One is barter, then counter phase, and offset. So first we'll see what is counter trade. In recent years, this is the last part. So in recent year, many exporters have been forced to finance the international transactions by taking full or partial payment in the same way from the uh, from other than money. So a number of alternatives financial methods such as counter trade are widely used. So what is counter trade? In a counter trade transaction, a sell results in product flowing in the one direction to buyer. A separate stream of products and services are flowing in the opposite direction. It's also created. Counter trade generally involves a seller from west and buyer in a developing country. For example, the countries in the former Soviet bloc have historically relied heavily on the counter trade. This approach, which reached a peak in the popularity in mid 1980s, is now used in some 100 countries within the former Soviet Union. Then counter trade flourished in 1990s following the collapse of the central planning system. Two categories of counter trade we will just discuss now, that is barter. Barter falls into one category, the mixed form of counter trade, including the counter phase, offset, and compensating trading. And switch trading also belong in a separate category. They incorporate a real distinction from barter because of the transaction involves money or credit. So barter system, that was much popular in India before the British introduced the concept of rupees or money. So the term barter describes the least complex and oldest form of bilateral, non-monetarized counter trade. Simple barter is a direct exchange of goods and services between two parties. Although no money is involved, both partners construct an approximate shadow of price for products flowing in each direction. Companies sometimes seek outside help from the barter specialists. For example, New York-based Atwood Richard engaged in barter in all parts of the world. Generally, however, distribution indirect between the trading partners with no immediate or no intermediary requirement. Then counterface. The counterphase form of counter trade is also known as parallel trading or parallel barter. Is distinguished from the other forms in each delivery is in exchange is paid for its cash. For example, Rockwell International sold a printing press to Zimbabwe for $8 million. The deal went through, however, only after Rockwell agreed to purchase $8 million in ferrochrome and the nickel from Zimbabwe, which is subsequently sold on the other world. Now, next is offset. So, offset is a reciprocal arrangement whereby the government in the importing country seeks to recover large sums of hard currency spent on expensive purchases such as military aircrafts or telecommunication systems. In fact, government is saying that if you want us to spend government money on your exports, you must import products from your country. So offset arrangement may also involve the corporation in manufacturing, some form of a technology transfer, placing subcontracts locally and arranging local assembly or manufacturing equal to certain percentage of the contract value. So compensation trading. So compensation trading, also called as buyback. So it is a form of counter trade that involves two separate and parallel contracts. In one contract, the supplier agrees to build a plant or provide plant equipment, patents or license, or technical, managerial and distribution expertise for a hard currency down payment at the time of delivery. In the other contract, the supplier company agrees to take the payment in the form of plant's output equal to the investment minus interest for a particular period, as many as for 20 years. Last is switch trading. So it is called as a triangular trade or swap or switch trading. It is a mechanism that can be applied to barter or counter trade. In this arrangement, the third party step into a simple barter or other counter trade arrangement when one of the parties is not willing to accept all the goods received in the transaction. The third party may be professional switch trader, switch trading house, or a bank. The switching mechanism proves a secondary market for counter trade or barter goods and reduces the inflexibility inherent in barter and counter trade. Fees charged by switch traders range from 5% of the market value for commodities to 30% for the high technology items. Switch traders develop their own networks of firms and personal contracts and are generally headquarters in Vienna, Amsterdam, Hamburg, or London. If a party to the original transaction anticipates that the product received in a barter or counter trade deal will be sold eventually at a discount by the switch trader, the common practice is to price the original products higher, build in a special charges for port storage or consulting, or require shipment by the national carriers. Now we are moving towards the summary part. So what we have learned today. So pricing decisions are crucial elements of the marketing mix that must reflect cost, competitive factors, and consumer perception regarding value of the product. In a true global market, the law of one price would prevail. Pricing strategies include market scheming, market penetration, and market holding. Novice experts frequently use the cost plus method when setting prices. These and the other costs lead to export price escalations. The accumulation of cost that occurs when the products are shipped from one country to another. Expectations regarding the currency fluctuations, inflation, then government controls, and the other competitive situation must be factored into pricing decisions. The introduction of the euro has impacted the price strategy in the European Union because of improved price transparencies. Global companies can maintain competitive prices in world markets by shifting production sources as business conditions change. Overall, a company's pricing policies can be categorized as ethnocentric, polycentric, and geocentric. Several additional pricing issues are related to global marketing. The issues of grey markets goods arises because price variations between different countries lead to parallel importers. Dumping is another continuous issue that can result in the strained relations between the trading partners. Price fixing among the commodities is anti-competitive and illegal. Transfer pricing is an issue because of the sheer monetary volume of intra-corporate sales, and because country governments are anxious to generate as much tax revenues as possible. Various forms of counter trade play an important role in today's global environment. Barter, counterfeits, offset compensation trading, and switch trading are the main counter trade options. So, discussion questions for students. What are the basic factors that affect the price in the market? What consideration enter into the pricing decisions? Then next is define the various types of pricing strategies. and objectives available to the global marketers, identify some of the environmental constraints on global pricing decisions, then why do price differences in the world markets often lead to the grey marketing? What is dumping? Concept of dumping. Why was the dumping such an important issue during the Uruguay round of GATT negotiation? Then what is the transfer price? So what is why it is important issue for companies with foreign affiliates? Then seventh question in between is what is the difference between ethnocentric, polycentric, and geocentric pricing strategies? What would you recommend to a company that has the global market aspirations? And compare and contrast different forms of counter trade. So here the question importance are the second number question, define the various types of pricing strategies and objectives. And question number 7, difference between the ethnocentric, polycentric, and geocentric pricing strategies. So these are important questions. So uh, that much for today. I have to take your attendance. Once again, I have to just take a snapshot. I think one more student was there, no? Or only three are there from the beginning? Chinmay, Jay, and Aditya. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Only three students, no? No four student.
Shefali was there, sir. Shefali.
Okay, Shefali.
Yes,
Okay,
sir.
I will mark her attendance.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. So I will stop today and I will upload this video on YouTube. And after two lectures, collectively, I will send all the PPTs to you. So I think there will be total nine lectures, nine sessions. So
Sure, sir.
seven I have covered. So eight and
Okay.
nine, only two lectures are remaining. Now we have been told that we have to finish the syllabus up to 7th or 8th of May. So I think
Yeah.
for 7th May we are just having one Sunday in between, that is on 1st of May. So I'm afraid
Okay.
on 1st of May again there will be a holiday. So I don't know. We are not getting any Sunday now. So because first May is Sunday, on 8th May again, before 8th May we have to finish the syllabus. So as you can
Yes,
see
sir.
on the screen, we are not having any Sunday now. So I will just talk to Vijaya ma'am, and if she allows us, if she permits us, then in between, like on 30th of the May, or in between maybe 6th or 5th, whatever timing is suitable to all, I'm okay with all the